Hello and welcome to the Blizzard Watch podcast. I'm your host, Matt Rossi. I'm a year older, although really I'm not. I'm a couple days older, but you know how it works. Today was my birthday, so we're going to just do this show in honor of my birthday. No, we're not. We're going to talk about Blizzard and its games. With me, of course, are my two fantastic and not having a birthday co-hosts, Editor-in-Chief Liz and amazing Shaman Joe. Say hi, guys.
Hello.
So, I do want to mention really briefly before we get up is that Cataclysm, you'll remember Cataclysm. I remember it because I was working in a different website, one called, I'm just going to use the name, it's called WoW Insider. I worked there at the time. And
Never heard of it.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, well, it was a little thing. I'm sure you guys missed it. I was in it before it was cool. But one of the things that I've always remembered about it was that it launched on my birthday.
Mm-hmm.
And it specifically launched on my birthday in 2011. Maybe 2010. I'm not sure. I think it is 2011 though, because I remember somebody commenting that it's the 10th anniversary this year. And there's a lot of people have different reasons for disliking Cataclysm, but to me, Cataclysm is the transmog expansion.
Mm-hmm.
Cataclysm is the expansion where transmog was first introduced to us, so it is automatically the best expansion, and it will never be topped unless I don't know what they could add to the game that would provide more enjoyment than transmog has to me over the years. So yeah. Before we go on to actual news stories, though, Liz?
Oh, I was going to wait for another news story. Hello, everyone. I want to remind you that Blizzard Watch is supported by your Patreon contributions. And we're doing a little pledge drive for the end of the month and trying to get some support going. And the thing is that we're a little below our desired goal of $5,000 a month to support kind of full site operations. We are, as of right this second, at $4,298 a month, which is actually, we've gone up a good bit since we started this. We were just kind of hovering over $4,000 a month. So thank you to all of the supporters who have donated and upped their contributions and become supporters this month, because that helps so much. It may sound trite, but you all are the reason you're here. Your support keeps the site running. It keeps the lights on. And we are so glad you are here with us, listening, reading, and supporting us if you can. And I would like to read out the names of our new supporters this week. We have Barbara, Lottie, Nancy, Jeffrey, Jeff, Adam, Colvier, Mark, EJ, Rick, Armez, Brian, Benjamin, Ken, Verdigris, Gary, Andrew, Zuzan, Diana, Sumaxu, Mark, Coral, Kit, Andrew, Rally, Daryl, John, Matt, Joe, Winterwolf, Zed, Stormy Steph, Andrew, Scott, Bruno, Incalescent, Kay, Mike, and Hulk have all joined us. Yes, I assume that is
you were a good egg, Hulk.
Yeah, I assume that is the actual Hulk, that's really heartening to know that he listens and supports us.
Thanks, Mark Ruffalo.
We are so glad you are here with us. Every dollar helps us out. If you are listening to this podcast, then we have a $3 a month tier that you may be interested in, because that gives you early access to all of our podcasts. And you get the uncut version of these podcasts, which mostly has the three of us on before the podcast, talking about all kinds of nerdy stuff. And we have $5 a month where you get an ads-free site experience. And at $25 a month, you can also get a character background written for you by one of our staff, like maybe Matt here, which could be for your Warcraft character, could be for your D&D character, whatever you want. But if you can financially support us, it helps so much. We really appreciate it. Thank you for everyone who supports us. Even if you're just giving us moral support, even if you can't afford financial support, we are glad to have you here. So thank you. Please support the site if you can. And back to you, Matt.
I wish I had something really cool to say when you do that. Like, back to me, and I got nothing but thanks. Thank you to everyone who does support us, because it does mean the difference between being able to do this and not being. yeah, so we're going to move on and talk about other things. Like, for instance, this Friday is Diablo 3 Season 25, which, in addition to being the 25th season of Diablo 3, is also a bit of a celebration of the 25th anniversary of the entire Diablo franchise, which actually it's December 31st will be the official 25th anniversary, because it was December 31st, 1996 was when original Diablo went live, when they launched it. So yeah, 25 years. You keep that in your heads. I was 25 to give you an idea of how old I am now. So yeah, it's really something. It's a really kind of amazing thing to think about. This is a little early, but it makes sense to do it. The season that starts in December is a good time to do an anniversary thing. And the season theme, the Lords of Hell theme, is very much it is very, very much a original Diablo reference. It's the various greater and lesser evils are all involved in doing mischief back, ever since the end of Reaper of Souls. Their little pieces of those guys are wandering around, and now you can collect them and stick them in your head, because that's always a good idea.
I mean, it worked out. Nothing ever bad happened with that. Come on. We have no track record or any knowledge of anything going wrong by shoving a stone like that into our foreheads. It is perfectly fine, healthy. In fact, it might cure all of your illnesses. At least that's what this copy that is saying that I'm being told that I need to read, that's written in the blood of humans. Huh. Okay, then.
Joe is, Joe Perez, head of the Diablo Focus Research Group. But regardless, yeah, that's happening this season. We talked about it last week, so I'm not going to belabor it too much. But it is really an interesting season. It's one of the more interesting ones. They've been doing interesting ones, like the Ethereum weapons from last season were also a reference. They were a reference to Diablo 2. And they were obviously part of the idea was to synergize with the launch of Diablo 2 Resurrected. So yeah, now they're just doing one for the anniversary. And I'm actually really interested to see how it affects things. I did a revamp of one of our posts talking about leveling to 70 as fast as possible, because I really do think if you get the right headpiece and weapon gems early enough, this could really change the way you're leveling, because each of them has specific abilities. One of the ones that I really like is kind of a unique idea. The stone every time you deal poison damage, it increases the damage, and it reduces your cooldowns and increases your damage that you deal. And there's a gem that goes in the head that puts all your stuff on super long cooldowns, but gives you a massive damage boost. You take 13.5% less damage, and you deal 75% more damage when you use this one. I believe that's the Shard of Hatred, but it could be something else. It might be the Sliver of Terror. I can never remember which one. But those two things synergize. If you use both of them, you'll basically get your cooldowns back to where they normally are, but you'll still get the massive damage buff every time you use a cooldown ability. So they could come together really effectively to increase the way you play the game. And they definitely, some of the gems really do steer you towards a play style. Like one of the ones that I really find interesting is the Ball favored destruction one. I think it's called Essence of Destruction. Mm-hmm. That allows you to just walk through mobs. There's no collision anymore. You just pass through them, and you put a debuff on them when you do, that if they die within 7 seconds, you get a massive refresh of all your cooldowns and power upgrade. And if they don't die in 7 seconds, you take 2% of your health as damage. And it can't proc or it can't be applied once you hit 35% health. But if you've already applied it, it can still kill you. Like, this can kill you if you don't get it right. So it's a really high risk one to use. But if you get it right, everything will die and you'll be practically unstoppable. So
those tend to be my favorite type of, in games that do that. I always tend to skew towards high risk, high reward, because I think it's the most fun. Because I'm going to say this, Diablo feels safe now. Diablo 3 made you feel like a god. It didn't do a very good job of that same feeling of terror that Diablo 2 did. So something like this, where you can give yourself that same feeling of feeling like a god, but also have that, oh no, I done messed up. Oh, there goes my health. Like, I like that. I kind of like that balance.
Yeah, I think in some cases, with the way Diablo 3 works, you had to keep pursuing higher and higher rift levels or higher and higher torment until you basically max torment out to start feeling challenged. That is, in fact, a consequence of the Paragon system
Yeah.
and the better and better gear. So I agree that there's interesting aspects to this that will affect the way the game plays. It will affect the way people levels. I'm looking forward to watching it in action and seeing which combination of head and weapon gems, calling them gems and shards, whatever, they're gems. Whatever combination of those two works to get more players, and what do they use it for? Like some of these are going to be really great for AOE farming, and some of these will be just great for I want to be unkillable. Like if you combine the one that reduces the damage when your cooldowns are up, there's another one that straight up reduces all damage you take and all damage you deal. But if you combine that with the one that increases the damage you deal while you are in cooldown, you could basically be indestructible and still do slightly more damage than you normally do. Because the amount of damage reduced is like 50%, but the amount of damage increased is 75%. So you'll actually still be a little stronger than you normally are. And meanwhile, you'll be taking like less than half the damage you normally. So that's interesting to me. That's a build that you could play around with. But that's all I really got to say about Diablo Season 25 because, it's out in like 3 days. It's been on the PTR. There's something that I think we're going to talk about. I think we should try and keep it spoiler-free as much as we can. But it is not really a spoiler, in my opinion, because it is exactly what I think most of us expected. Patch 9.2 is on the PTR, and as of I think Joe, you said 10 minutes before we started the pre-show.
Yeah, Taryn Gregory tweeted it out, and Wowhead picked it up about 10 minutes before the pre-show actually went live.
Yeah. Yeah, you go for it. I've seen it. I literally watched it when I got your email, but you go ahead.
So we got a new cinematic. We're probably going to be talking about it more on Lore Watch, and there will be some heavy spoiler warnings with it. We got a new cinematic detailing what happens in the moments between essentially the end of the Sanctum of Domination, Sylvanas getting her soul shoved back into her body, and what that winds up happening going to the next layer, going to the Sepulchre of the Ancients, essentially. Or the first ones, whatever we want to call it. So it's not data mined. This is an actual release from Blizzard. So keep that in mind too. So people are going to have really strong emotions about it. Whether you love it or hate it, I want you to make sure that, I'm going to say this, even though I know I usually don't have to, but bear in mind, if you are unhappy with it, or if you think it's going in a specific direction, it is one cinematic out of whatever else is to come. And make sure that you do not take your aggression out on the people that made it. It is a beautifully well done cinematic. Just kind of hang in there for the ride. I will wait to do my victory lap and gloating. And yeah, this is pretty much like Matt's right. This is a lot of this is what most of us called, except I think it's a little deeper than what some folks have expected. So Matt, you said you watched it just before we started. What did you think?
Well, I mean, everything you just said is true enough. It is very, very good. In terms of how I feel about it, that will have to wait till we can actually talk about it with spoilers, because I feel a lot of things about it. But I was struck by how expressive they managed to get these character models to be.
They abandoned some of the more pseudo realism that they tried doing and went back to the more artistic style of character layout, and it really, I'm sorry, I don't mean to jump in there, but I noticed the art shift a little bit, and that let them do such deep expression. It was really, oh man.
And I often express frustration with the game's focus on Sylvanas' character.
Yeah.
But I will say this, and I want this to be heard by people who think I always hate everything. Patty Mattson is a phenomenal actress.
Mm-hmm.
And she has done an amazing thing in this cinematic. The effect that she has had, the effect she creates with just her voice, because she's not the one doing the moving. So she's doing it just with her voice. And it is, you have not heard her do this. You've heard, if you've been playing World of Warcraft since 2004, you've heard Sylvanas sound a very specific way. You've not heard this voice, and it is astonishing. It is really well done.
It speaks to the breadth of her talent.
Yeah, absolutely. Whatever you feel about it, and I have feelings about it, and I will talk about them. We got Lore Watch coming up, so that's going to happen. But yeah, it is an extremely well done cinematic. I still think it's one of the places where World of Warcraft's team has got absolutely superlative people, and it always has been the cinematics and in live story development groups. I mean, just really, really well done. And there's also a bit of nostalgia, and I liked hearing characters say the things that I would say in this position. I got to give it up to Bane. Bane is basically just, you could replace Bane with me in a cow wig, and that's basically how I would react in that scenario. That would be what I would have said. So,
and
yeah,
the one thing I would want to say too, for people watching it for the first time, especially if you're listening to us or in the live stream with us, and you're watching it for the first time, really pay attention to the dialogue. And don't just let surface emotions kind of run it, because I'm noticing that there's a couple things that are going on with it. People are either having a very visceral reaction one way or another because of how they feel about the character, and might be missing some of the context that are in. So just make sure you pay attention to what's actually being said. So
yeah.
Liz, did you get a chance to see it?
I have not watched it. I walked in the door like 5 minutes before we started podcasting, so I haven't seen it yet. I do tend to I don't pay as much attention to the story as the two of you do, particularly not before patch releases, because we don't have all the context for it, and we get all of these bits and pieces. And I know this was an official release for Blizzard, and I'll probably watch it this evening sometime. But I always think I'd rather see the whole story, and we always see these little bits and pieces, and people jump out to criticize or they're unhappy with something. And I don't always agree with the direction the story goes, but I'd rather see the whole thing than catch these little tidbits.
Yeah, I think an interesting point that Taran made in his tweet was that this is being done to play test people's ability to get the context.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, so which is something I thought was fascinating. So
yeah, I saw that tweet, which is why I was trying to also help and notate the pay attention.
Yeah, there's a lot of context in this.
There's a lot of subtlety.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on in the dialogue that I think would be really easy to miss. I've talked before about how people often make an assumption that if they don't like something, it's bad, and that you can dislike something and still recognize that it is a piece of quality art, that there is art in it, that it was well made, that is well crafted. You don't always dislike things because they're bad. Sometimes you dislike things because you simply didn't want them or some other reason.
Yeah.
And that's something that keep in mind as you process whatever your reaction is going to be. As somebody who has expressed my opinion on this storyline before, I thought this was an extremely good cinematic in terms of it getting across what the story is. And the acting is amazing, and it is worth watching and paying attention to. But since we're not going to do any spoilers on it, we're now going to move on to talk about the fact that as of today, as we're recording this, Legion Time Walking is now live.
Yes.
In Shadowlands. Another good thing you get on December 7th, along with the expansion that brought you Transmog.
Although I hear the Mage Tower is brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Liz actually, after I'd written the email, Liz emailed back and was like, "Oh, and they've already hot fixed it."
Yeah,
they've already done some. Yeah, they've already done some changes this morning.
So I didn't get a chance to read that because I was literally in the middle of trying to force a cat to take eye drops it doesn't want. So could you tell us what's going on with that, Liz?
Well, see, I haven't tried all of the different Mage Tower scenarios, but I did hear that this morning the tank challenge was just one-shotting people or two-shotting people, that it was hitting really hard. They did... They've nerfed some of the things, and it was pretty quick after the servers went up. They nerfed a few things. I'm
going to be upfront. I expected that because without your artifact power,
we talked about that, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. Some of the stuff hit really freaking hard, and you needed the tanking artifact in order to get through it. So I was expecting some one shots. I'll be upfront. That's one of the three reasons I haven't bothered even thinking about doing this time around.
Yeah, so they have put out some nerfs, and what I've heard, we know, or maybe you didn't play during Legion or didn't pay attention and don't know, that the Mage Tower during the time it was out in Legion got easier. It was toned down, and we all got better gear as it went on. And the Mage Tower now feels like it's on the high end of that tuning. So I went in and tried the healer challenge this morning a few times, and I did not get very far. It didn't feel bad to me. Have you given it a try, Joe?
Not yet. It's on my list to do actually as soon as the podcast is done recording today, is to go in and see what happened. Because I always had a hard time with the Helion one. I would get almost to the end when it was at current level, even with fully powered up, and like something would go sideways, and I'm shaking my fist at Granny. So like,
oh yeah,
I'm curious how it's going to go now with everything else with the conduits and everything that I have set up. Because I have a feeling that Kit plus conduits and Covenant are going to play a big role.
None of your Covenant stuff works there.
Oh.
None of it.
Yeah, okay, so I'm just going to die. It's fine.
Yeah.
Yep, there we go.
I went in and I didn't get very far. I never completed the healer challenge during Legion. I never managed to finish it. Like you said, I got to the last phase and I could never get to all the way to the end. But I went in this morning a few times and it felt to me very similar. It felt similar difficulty level. I was not getting very far, but then I also hadn't made any effort to gear for it. I hadn't made any effort to like really prep for it, like I know some people have done. I just wanted to check it out. And it's kind of the same thing that you're healing the worst party in existence. You are healing a tank that is dual wielding. You are healing 2 DPS that do not know how to get out of the way of things and just hang out letting things hit them.
Well, the ones, her hip hurts. I mean, she can't move. It's fine.
I mean, it's just when things start hitting those DPS, they go down real fast. And I think that's actually very similar to how it felt at the time. They were very weak, and you're supposed to keep this horrible party alive. And if any of them die, you have to start over. It sucks. One of the really interesting things I think about balancing this for paladins, holy paladins in particular, is during Legion, we did not have holy power. We could just use our mana to heal. Now, all of our powerful heals require holy power, and that has significantly changed how the class plays. And right now, a lot of our holy power generation is locked behind Covenant abilities. It is, I'm a Kyrian, a lot of holy paladins are, and it is our Covenant abilities that give us burst power and give us big healing power by letting us generate a big batch of 5 holy power at a go. Without that, we can be pretty starved for holy power. We certainly don't have the kind of burst capability and AoE healing ability that we do in current content. And so you feel a lot weaker. It's very weird to go in and play without Covenant abilities because they're such an essential part of our rotation right now.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. And I think it's going to be, I think a lot of heal, at least from the healing end, from what I'm hearing, your experience is not dissimilar to other classes as well. But you're basically going in without half a toolkit essentially because it was balanced around the artifact. And like, I mean, in my case, like the artifact for me at the time gave me a ton of AoE healing, like on top of my already AoE healing. So I was able to keep a party up pretty dang good because the artifact is like, here, have splash. It's great. I mean, and let's not forget the fact that you don't have the legendary effects, because at that time, I think when Mage Tower was out, you were able to wear 3 legendaries, right?
Yep. And so I don't know if it was 3, but it was at least 2.
So you could have multiple effects on there. So like, and some of those legendary effects were very, very strong.
Well, let me put it to you this way. When I did the warrior one as a tank. I did it on somebody else's character because I didn't care about the artifact appearances because they weren't going to be transmoggable. And then they went and made them transmoggable, and I was like, you sons of. But one of my friends was like, I can't do this. Can you come do it? And I'm like, I have significant vision issues. He's like, yeah, but just come give it a shot. So he gave me his login, so I logged in from here and played his character. And he had these bracers that created a healing effect every time you dealt damage or took, I think it's dealt damage. I have to go look up what the bracers did, but they were like, with those bracers, you could adopt a much more reckless tanking style because you would heal up constantly. It's the thing warriors are terrible at. Warriors don't have really good self-healing. Mm-hmm. These bracers made it so you had good self-healing. And now you could approach that challenge like a Death Knight tank and you would heal up more, and as a result you could push the fight, you could push your DPS in the fight. You didn't have to worry about as much about surviving it. That doesn't exist anymore. Those legendaries, they're there in the game, but they won't work, obviously. You don't have them, and you don't have the artifact. You don't have the shield that the artifact puts up. Just I do not look forward to that, man. When I eventually start trying to get the book mount, I am not looking forward to doing it on a tank, because yikes, that's not going to be fun.
Yeah.
I mean, they've rebalanced. They've supposedly retuned this, keeping all of this stuff in mind. But I just don't know how you properly retune this to classes that are so different from what they were, and classes that don't have the same abilities. Yeah,
3 expansions. Yeah, from we End of Legion, Battle for Azeroth, and now Shadowlands. The mechanics are vastly different. So yeah, I that is something that's going to be worth watching.
And I mean, like at the time, you would have guides that were like real specific. Use your artifact power right here. This is when you need it. And now you don't have that. You're playing something that I find really interesting. For the past 3 expansions, we have been playing. Our base class has not increased in power, not at all. We've been given these borrowed power systems where all of our power is placed into an item or a system, and at the end of the expansion, it's gone. But the problem is, none of those systems are in place in the Mage Tower anymore. You don't have your Shadowland stuff. You don't have your Legion stuff either. So you are attacking these challenges with your base class. And right now, your base class is designed and balanced around having this borrowed power system of covenants. That is how the class is designed to be balanced. So they've put us in this challenging situation, and they've taken away these extra abilities that are designed to make our classes playable and balanced. And that feels really weird. I mean, it's like I'm playing my class from Mist of Pandaria, and I don't have anything. It's weird. It's weird. I don't know how you balance for this, or if they're going to hit the balance correctly.
It is one of those things that it is going to be a work in progress. I'm sure they'll eventually nail it, but it will take a while. But one last thing, and then we should probably move on to doing some questions, because we got quite a few this week, and this one I really want to do. Liz, here's your time. What's going on with Honored and Fractured in Alterac Valley? Why is this a problem? Why are people yelling at me about it?
Are people actually yelling at you about it?
Yes, I get a lot of yells. People yell at me for a lot of things. I do a lot of blocking.
Matt just thinks everybody who talks to him because he plays a warrior, he thinks that everybody's yelling at him. It's just how this works.
Well, the thing is, the new Hearthstone expansion, which went live today, is themed around Alterac Valley. And they have this big, huge thing going on where when you participate in different Hearthstone battles, you earn honor. Just like if you were PvPing in Alterac Valley. And it even says after you've won a fight, it says HK Scout or whatever, just like it does in PvP. Like, you remember? Yeah, it would say honorable kill and the rank of the person you just killed, and it would just bump up on your screen. And so Hearthstone is doing the exact same thing right now. And one of the things I find really funny about that is there are a lot of Hearthstone players who have not played Warcraft. And so they would get HK Scout, and they're like, "What? What is that? What's an HK?" Like they would be really confused about it, because this is like, it's totally stolen from Warcraft, and over there it has no context.
Well, not even that. Like, they don't even use that in Warcraft anymore, do they? Like, even if you were to play like current day, like unless you went back and played Classic, you wouldn't even know what that is.
Yeah, it really feels like old school Alterac Valley, and that is kind of cool. What I like less about it is that it is only in a very small number of game modes. It is in constructed, it is in duels, which is also kind of a halfway constructed mode, and it is in arena. So if you are playing Battlegrounds, if you are playing Tavern Brawls, if you are playing Mercenaries, and Battlegrounds is my favorite game mode, you won't see any of this. This is just going to pass you by. But as long as you're playing game modes in which this is available, you will earn honor throughout the season, and you will earn rewards from the honor you earn. You earn some honor from each game you play, and you earn more honor if you defeat someone. And you earn, I think, the most honor if you defeat someone from the opposite faction. When you log on for the first time in Fractured and Alterac Valley, it will ask you to choose a faction. And you pick that faction, and that's the faction you are for the remainder of this for this event. So I think it's really neat. I think it's really flavorful, and I've also managed to completely not participate in it so far because I'm mostly playing Battlegrounds. I'm playing around with mercenaries. I always do a lot of tavern brawls, and so I kind of have mixed feelings about this. But I do think it's pretty cool. If you play Constructed, definitely log on, check it out. Check out the new expansion, which 135 new cards. Yeah, I think it's interesting, and it's also kind of not interesting. I really like it when Hearthstone pulls in things from Warcraft, and sometimes it pulls them in and makes them feel more fun and more lively than they have in Warcraft. So, yeah, it's nice. It's a fun little thing.
All right. Well, at this point, we're going to move on to doing some of the emails because that is the thing we do here. If you have an email or question for the show you'd like us to look at, you can either send it to podcast@blizzardwatch.com with the subject line podcast or Blizzard Watch. So we know it's for this show. In the past, I have stolen questions from Joe because we've been low on questions, and he's done the same to me.
100%.
We're like that Star Trek episode where the two like people or one call like black on one side and white on the other. We're like that, locked forever in eternal combat. But also, if you're like right now saying, why did he make that reference? My God, that's like ancient. I am ancient. It is my birthday. I am very old. If you don't want to send emails, you can use our Patreon. We've got the Q podcast and question. Isn't it Patreon Q and podcast questions? Yes, that is it.
Patreon Q and podcast questions.
Yeah. So if you have a question for us, you can put that in there. We tend to look there first. I even got questions for this email from that one. Or there's also the Q questions channel, which we look in for people who can't be patrons for whatever reason, because we understand that not everybody can do that. But yeah, I'm going to do something a little unusual here because there's a question in here I want to answer, and it's my birthday, so I'm going to read it out, and then these two can answer it, and then I can throw mine in afterwards. You said you wanted to talk about more games. What are your top 5 games from the last decade? Steve of the Steverinos. Well, Steve, thanks for the question. I'm going to hold on, I'm actually going to do this. Yeah. Liz, you're up.
I could talk about this for like an hour. My top favorite games. I'm gonna cheat a little bit and say Mass Effect 2. Mass Effect 2 came out in 2010. It's a little further back than a decade.
Really, it's only 2010.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Which makes it 11 years old.
They re-released it.
Count it. They've re-released it. It counts.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Re-released. Mass Effect 2 was just such a great game, and for a long time, I didn't play it on release. I didn't play 1 or 2 on release because I was like, there's shooters. I don't want to play a shooter. And someone finally talked me into it, and it's just like, holy crap, no one told me what great games these were, and they're so much more than shooters. And I particularly focus on Mass Effect 2 because it's really cinematic. It has a real feeling of being in a movie, like more than I think. I just can't think of any game that did it as well as Mass Effect before Mass Effect. Lots of games have tried, but I think Mass Effect just really gave me the feel of kind of being in the middle of this sort of cinematic experience, being the hero of this cinematic experience, and all of the shots, like all of the cutscenes where you're interacting with other characters are really artfully designed. Someone thought about each frame and has made something that's like you could take almost any frame of this game and print it out and frame it and put it on the wall as a piece of art. They're all beautiful. Every framing says something about the characters, about the emotion going on, about the scene. It's such a beautifully put together game. That's definitely my top game of the decade. Figuring out a list of the next 4 would be harder. Mass Effect 3 is definitely on there.
Joe can talk.
Go, Joe.
I mean, I've got a list of a few that I think are in my top games. I don't know how I would rank them. I mean, aside from, we all know what my number 1 is going to be. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that the top game of the last decade for me is Spider-Man PS4, or if you want to call it Sony Spider-Man. 100% that's my comfort game. That's my go-to game. It's my favorite game. I think it's one of the few that have ever nailed the character, the motion, the locomotion, and the interactions perfectly. Not just Peter Parker, but also Miles Morales. And then giving Miles his own like mainline story, his time in the sun, and giving him a headline like that in a time where most protagonists in video games are still mostly white people. And this is not a shot at that, but it's one of those things, like, representation matters. So seeing somebody who is very close to who I am get to headline a game, that means a lot to me. So it's going to be my number one probably until I die, or until maybe the next one comes out. But it's one of those just fantastic storytelling, fantastic pacing, fantastic characterization. If you have not played it yet, now is definitely the time to do it. The Ultimate Edition is on sale. If you have a PS5 or a PS4, it's worth picking up. Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Which is weird for me. I love Zelda, but I hate Skyrim. It's one of those things where, like, I don't know why I just never ever could get into Skyrim, despite the fact that I loved Oblivion. But Breath of the Wild, which a lot of people just jokingly call Legend of Zelda Skyrim, just hit every possible right chord with me, to the point where I have 100% completed that game 3 times voluntarily, for whatever reason. Like, I just absolutely adore that game. It's going to be iconic for a reason. It's fantastic. The God of War game that came out for the PS4 is probably one of my favorite video games, not just because of what it did. It didn't do anything really groundbreaking as far as, like, gameplay goes. It was your generic third person action RPG type game with mild puzzle solving and platform. But what it did is it took a very one-dimensional character, because let's be honest, Kratos is an exceptionally one-dimensional character, and actually gave, like, a new characterization to him, to the point where I that's one of those few games that I would, like, roll around on the boat just to hear them talk, just to hear what voice lines they had recorded, what stories they would tell, what they would do. It was just that good. It made me care about Kratos, and I never thought I would care about Kratos. So I gotta give it credit for that. And the other one that I'm going to call out as far as, like, top games of the last decade is Bayonetta 2. I unashamedly love Bayonetta. I like the genre of games like Devil May Cry, with the action RPG beat 'em up game system type things with light RPG elements. I like that. I love those games. I think Bayonetta 2 did it the best, and that's even with Devil May Cry 5. I would play that game. I still play that game. I have multiple copies of that game, and I think it's incredibly undersung. I think people don't pay attention to it because they just write it off for whatever reason. It has a lot of depth of combat. It has a lot of depth of character progression. I personally love the fact that the character just gives no Fs about anything and is just who they are unashamedly. But it's just a fantastic game, and it really, to me, personifies that genre at its best. So that's my handful.
Right. Liz, you got any more you want to talk about?
I would definitely say Dishonored. Dishonored 1 and Dishonored 2 are actually both out in this decade. I love these 2 games because they, Mass Effect had this kind of saying, you can be Renegade, you can be Paragon. But one of the things I felt about Dishonored is that if you choose to be a good guy or a bad guy, the world around you just significantly shifts. That doesn't happen in Mass Effect. You're playing pretty much the same game. And in Dishonored, you are playing the same game, but the world around you changes quite a lot. Yeah. You can go through and play it bloodbath, murder everyone, and you see the plague in the world around you get worse as you just leave.
I still have nightmares about those rats. I still have nightmares about those rats.
Yeah, it's a great game. I loved that you could do the whole game without killing anyone.
Mm-hmm. Although up front, sometimes doing the whole game without killing anyone means you do stuff so much worse than killing them that I felt bad that I didn't kill them.
Oh, yeah.
You didn't like horribly disfiguring somebody with steam?
There were some fates worse than death there. Like
the one where you give the woman to the creepy guy who's like obsessed with her. It's like, this is. I should have just killed you.
I felt
for
real
your own
dirty
sake.
at that one. Oh man.
Or there is the religious leader that you brand as a heretic with like an actual brand, And it's like it would have been a lot kinder if you killed him, because instead of being this religious leader or even an outcast, like literally no one will talk to him. Literally no one will interact with him at all. And you can find him much later in the game. He has fallen victim to the plague, and he's like a plague zombie, you know? And so it's like he's gone from being top of the world to this like super tragic figure. And I mean, the guy deserved it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah,
But
still,
also, it would have been much kinder to just kill him right there. And Dishonored 1 and Dishonored 2 both do that. And I think you see the world around you shift in really interesting ways. And I also, enjoyed a lot of the challenges those presented with choosing to do things in violent or non-violent ways. There's that clockwork house in Dishonored 2.
Oh yeah.
Where the floors and the walls shift.
Yeah, that was brilliant.
Yeah, and finding your way through that was just kind of an adventure in and of itself. And you could play that where you didn't kill anyone and no one saw you. So you would get to the final boss and he wouldn't even know you were in his house. And you just drop in and kill him, or drop in and not kill him, depending on how you felt that day. But it was such a strange little level. There was another level that was a time travel level where you went back in time and you had this like mirror thing that would let you go to the present and let you go to the past. And you would use that to get past obstacles, like something that was in your way in the present. You might go to the past and it's not in your way, or you might go to the present and there's not a monster or a guard, and you might go back to the past. You're just jumping around, and there were some really unique things in Dishonored 2. I enjoyed both of them a whole bunch. Bioshock is another one that I really enjoyed. I enjoyed the first two. That, again, is going back a little longer than a decade. The first one more than the second one, but they were both had just it's because it has a really interesting story. It's a shoot 'em up, but it has this really interesting story in the background. And Bioshock Infinite is in the past decade, and that's definitely like the most interesting of them, because it went in this kind of it went really timey-wimey there about alternate universes, and it has I think the best DLC I have ever played in a game.
Yeah,
because
Burial at Sea was phenomenal.
Burial at Sea just went real twisted and real. You don't know what's real anymore in this game. It's like you're shifting. Are you playing Bioshock Infinite? Are you playing Bioshock 1? Are all of these worlds the same, or all of them different? Which world am I in?
It actually reminded me a bit of that DLC from Bioshock 2.
Mm-hmm.
The one where you basically go back to Rapture and you're working on behalf of an AI.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and that had a similar feel to it, although not as well developed.
Yeah, so I think Bioshock series definitely. I played Dragon Age a ton, but I'm not sure I would put it on my list of the top ones. Maybe? I love Dragon Age, and Dragon Age Inquisition I have played so many times. But it also has a lot of flaws, and I recognize more of those the longer the game has been out. So yeah, I haven't quite gotten to 5, but I think that's as close as I'm going to get.
Okay, well then I'll take off from the start.
Yes.
First one is going to be Titanfall 2. Because Titanfall 2 is the game that developed that time travel thing that you just mentioned that Dishonored ripped off from it. I'm not kidding. There's a whole level in Titanfall 2 where you get a time device and you go back and forth to get around obstacles and avoid fights and so forth. And it is very much exactly like the thing in Dishonored, except a year earlier. But also, Titanfall 2 did the amazing thing of making me care about a game that is not my genre. I do not like, it's essentially like a multiplayer, smash 'em up game where you pilot a giant robot and you fight other people piloting giant robots, and you jump in and out of your giant robot to try and shoot people with handguns and machine guns, and then you go back in your giant robot and try and kill them with a giant robot. It shouldn't be a game I care about. It shouldn't be a game I liked. It shouldn't be a game I want a sequel to. But it absolutely is, because they basically made the Titan, the machine, such an important character and such a well done character, where this is a performance where the actor is not really allowed to show much emotion in his voice, and yet manages to get across the emotion of this. The machine is itself a character, and there's just a lot to it. I recommend people go play it because it's not a very long campaign. I think it's like 20 hours.
Yeah,
all
it's
told. The story
20,
is not
24 hours, something like that.
Yeah, it's not a long game, but it is extremely well done.
And
It is good.
And just so you know, they were Titanfall 2 and Dishonored 2 released a month apart, not a year.
Okay, so Titanfall 2 still did it first. But regardless, besides that one, another one I'm going to mention is Horizon Zero Dawn, which I can't believe neither of you mentioned because
there's too many good games on that list, Matt. Like, we could sit here and have an entire episode.
That was actually in my head, and then I started talking about Dishonored, and it vanished out of the
Horizon Zero Dawn. I mean, Joe was talking about God of War, which is not on my list. Not that it's a bad game, but a couple years back, I had not had a PlayStation 4. I did not have one the whole time that the PlayStation 4 was big. But a couple years back for Christmas, they were selling cheap, and so my mother-in-law got me one, and it came with 3 games. It came with The Last of Us, which I played for like 5 hours and was done and never went back to it. I don't like zombie things or anything like that, and it's close enough. Then I went and played God of War, and I played through God of War and thought, yeah, this is really good. Everything Joe said about Kratos, they did. But I didn't find the gameplay satisfying. I thought it was, as Joe also pointed out, the gameplay is nothing special. The story is actually really special, but the gameplay is not. Then I played Horizon Zero Dawn, which is an amazing game to play with a ton of stuff going on, has an astonishingly well-realized, well-acted, fun character, and is a chilling. The story starts off and you think you know where it's going, and then it gets to where it actually is going. And it's like, it is a chilling indictment of so much of the modern world wrapped up in this adventure story about hunting giant robot dinosaurs. It is one of the best games by far of the past 10 years. The fact that it is just now getting a sequel is astonishing to me. I'm amazed that they didn't start rolling them out immediately after. But
I think they did, and they took their time because they didn't want to mess it up.
I'm hoping that the new one is as good as the original, because the original is phenomenally good. It is one of the best games put out on the PlayStation, bar none. It is.
I think it's on Game Pass now too.
Not it may be the PlayStation
PC now.
Yeah, it's on PC.
It's on PC, but it's not. Yeah.
It
was released. It was released for PC in the last year, I believe.
The reason I pointed it out is if you don't have people should play this game, and
if you don't have a PlayStation, you can get it for PC, and you absolutely should. Absolutely. So that's the one. Those 2 so far. The third one is going to be the game I played instead of Skyrim. And to this day, I think I made the right choice. Kingdoms of Amalur: Reckoning, which has now been re-released by THQ Nordic as Kingdoms of Amalur: Re-Reckoning. Ken Ralston wrote the story with assist from R.A. Salvatore. Todd McFarlane did a lot of the character design art. It is a bog standard story. It is not a particularly. It's got some unique little twists, but overall, it is. You're the chosen one who will deal with this fantasy threat. Except the reason you're the chosen one is because you don't have a fate, and that means that you're not fated to do anything. So they can't prepare for you. They can't have prophecies about you. Nobody knows what you're going to do, and you can change other people's fates because you can do something that's not supposed to happen. That's the one element I really like about the story. Otherwise, it is a bog standard. Bad fantasy people are doing bad fantasy things.
If you read any R.A. Salvatore, yeah.
It is. It is not super complicated, but the gameplay is just really good. It takes the idea of that kind of first/third person action RPG story, and it actually makes the mechanics part of telling the story. Fate shifting is phenomenal. It's just really good. And there's enough character customizations you can feel like you own the thing yourself. And it's not quite open world, not quite, because you have specific regions that you can go into and out of, and there's segues between them. But it's pretty close to open world. And I just absolutely love that thing. It is one of the best. Just if you like Skyrim, Ken Ralston is the guy who did Morrowind.
Yeah.
He did a lot of the Elder Scrolls, and I feel like this is what Skyrim would have been had he stayed there.
You know what? I agree. I 100% agree with you. Like, are you saying that? And I can't believe I never thought about that. But yeah, you're spot on.
Yeah, but that's three. Number four is going to be Assassin's Creed Odyssey, to the surprise of absolutely no one who's ever heard me talk. It is the only Assassin's Creed game to this day that I've actually cared about the main character. If you play Cassandra, if you play Alexios, I didn't like him as much. But if you play as Cassandra, it kind of feels like if you took Mass Effect 2, which isn't a great game, I'm just not listing it because it already got mentioned. If you took the idea of Shepard from Mass Effect 2 and put her in ancient Greece, that's kind of where it goes. But Cassandra is such a different character than anybody I'd seen before. Cassandra is one of those people who you'd expect her to be like a proto-Batman. You'd expect her to be like an Ezio, where she's like all grim and growly because horrible things happened in her childhood, but she's not. Yes, she's angry about those things, and she definitely wants revenge, but she still tells jokes.
Mm-hmm,
she still has time for goofy fun with her friends. She still has time, like, she can go from like kind of like a little almost dorky to I will destroy you, and it works. You believe it. Like, there's a one scene I absolutely love. I tell everyone about it. It's a bit of a spoiler, but in the opening of the game, the opening, by the way, is astonishing because you don't even realize until a certain point that you were just in the opening and now the game is starting. You're like, well, I've been playing this for 5 hours. What the heck?
Yeah.
So, but there's a part where Cassandra has found the Cyclops, the bad guy who's been trying to send people to kill her and otherwise being just a jerk. And he's currently effectively dunking a man's head repeatedly into a water pot as a kind of torture. And you show up and you're like, let him go. And there's this awesome moment where he yells to Cassandra, give it to me or I won't kill so-and-so for having you steal it. And you look at him and she turns her head in such a way that she doesn't have to say anything. The animation of just her gesture is enough to convey that, are you serious?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's beautiful. The game is broad and expansive. It does what the Witcher games want to do in terms of the scale and scope of its world. The boat scenes are awesome. I love some of the side quests are just hilarious. Yeah, and it is the one. Valhalla tried, and I give it props. I did like Valhalla, and I did play it, but Odyssey is just so much better. It is the best Assassin's Creed game, in my opinion, and I doubt they'll ever top it.
Odyssey does a better world building job. I'm going to compare the two, because I played Valhalla on your recommendation. We traded games at one point.
Yeah.
Matt and I traded games. So like Matt was super into Cyberpunk 2077, which I'm surprised he hasn't gushed about yet, which I hope he will. But I was playing Cyberpunk 2077 while he was knee deep in Valhalla, and then we swapped. And I can honestly say I think Odyssey did a better job world building than Valhalla did. Valhalla is not a bad game, but Odyssey was just fantastic with world.
Yeah, I think part of the problem for Valhalla was simply the fact that it was too afraid of things that had been introduced in previous games, and it wanted to be more like the original ones, and that was unfortunate. But since Joe segued for me, the number 5 is Cyberpunk 2077, and I know people are all going, what? But the game was awful. And the thing is A, it wasn't awful, but B, that's an example of how studio culture can ruin a game's chances to make a good impression.
Yeah. Not just studio culture, but studio culture and review culture, because there is a thing with that too.
Yeah, and review culture, and for that matter, just the culture of game development in general, which we have been talking about a lot this past year.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not going to belabor it, but I will say this. Had that game waited an extra 3 more months,
it
would have been better, but it still wouldn't have been fixed, because the crunch culture that designed and built that game was never sustainable. And Joe has pointed out there are whole patches of that game you see that you can tell something was here and they pulled it out.
Yep.
So that's all true. And I cop to all of it. If you've got a complaint along those lines, yeah. But the thing Cyberpunk 2077 does much better than I thought it was going to is that you think your character that you're playing is the character of this game, but it is not. The character you're playing is just an element of this game. The city is the character.
Yeah, agreed. And I think people miss that point, I think.
Yeah. Night City is the character. You will learn to understand Night City through this protagonist that you are playing, but that protagonist is simply a vehicle by which, and the thing is that they're really well acted, both male and female V, although I love Jeremy Lee does an amazing job as female V. But they're both good. They're both really good.
Yeah.
Keanu Reeves is Keanu Reeves. I don't know, what do you want? He shows up and he's Keanu Reeves. But as my wife pointed out, he is playing a very different character than he usually plays.
Yeah.
Because the character that Keanu Reeves is playing is a complete colossal bleep, and
he's playing Johnny Silverhand to a T.
Yeah, he makes you actually like him by the end of the game while still understanding this is a terrible person.
Because he acknowledges throughout the game, like he does it in that way that I think only he could do playing this character. Says, yeah, no, I know I'm a jerk. I know what I am, but at least I know what I am.
Yeah, and there's a lot to it. There's a lot to talk about that I don't think we have time for because we're right up against the time.
I think we are, but I mean, finishing out with this, I think this is another game that I just want to jump in real quick. If you haven't had a chance to play it yet, this is the time of year to consider maybe doing it. It's not a perfect game, but Cyberpunk 2077 is really good at that thing that Matt just pointed out. It is a masterclass in how the setting of a game can be a character. And Matt and I have been playing tabletop role-playing games forever. We've played Cyberpunk. We've played all the we've played this back in the day. And the video game does such a very, very good job of capturing the feel of Night City and what actual Night City is, and it being its own living, breathing entity that will eat you and eat you up, chew you up, and spit you out. Like it does a fantastic job of it. It really does capture the feel of it.
It is astonishing to me how well this game gives you the feeling of a world that is just falling apart. Yeah. And the reason the world is falling apart is people, and the city is the way it is because people. And it is, what's the old saying? I think it's Camus. Hell is other people. Night City is other people, and it is the people you run into and the quests you do. There's one quest in particular I always remember where you just happen to find the nomads that you've worked with before having problems with some quote unquote scavengers, and you get involved. And there's so many different ways. Like Liz was talking before about Dishonored and about how Dishonored, the things you do affect the world. Cyberpunk 2077 doesn't quite get there.
No,
but your reputation definitely changes how things play out. And it's really
to jump in real quick too. Like there's a DLC coming out for the game in the future. They are working on it, and I'm normally not a big proponent of DLCs, but something I've been getting asked by people who played the game and know that I played the game. Ask, with the endings we got, how can there be a DLC? And it's as soon as you accept that V isn't the main character, that it is just a vehicle.
Well, literally. This way. Yeah, if you played Dishonored, you know that they did the Death of the Outsider, and that doesn't have Corvo or Emily in it or anything. It's different characters. That's how they can do it. You could absolutely have different characters in the DLC. That being said, I want them to bring V back because I loved V. But yeah, absolutely, it is not V's story. It is Night City's story. But because I don't have time to also go into like a honorable mentions thing. Plus, Liz talked about a lot of them. Quite frankly, a lot of the stuff, and Joe hit a couple that I would have hit. So at this point, I'm going to be done. We did the entire show pretty much on this one email, as we knew we would. But it's my birthday, so I wanted to get it.
we almost started doing this question at the end of last week's podcast. And I was like, no, this is going to take us an hour. This is just by itself.
Because we could, like, we like that are listening to this, we play a lot of games. It's not, while this is the Blizzard Watch podcast, it's so much more than that. Like, we accept this. The people that make the games that we love play other games as well, and you can see the influences throughout it. So getting the chance to talk about, some of our favorite games that we've played in the last decade, thank you for that. And I hope that all of you out there get a chance to talk about your favorite the last decade. Jump over to our Discord channel, pop into one of our either our Patreon supporter chat channel or our general chat, and maybe strike this up. This is a great topic, especially this time of year with all of these games going on sale, or with secret holiday shopping or whatever going around. It's a great excuse to maybe pick up some of these games or see what other people are enjoying and maybe take a gamble. Like, you can pick up Cyberpunk 2077. I saw like a flash sale for it for $20.
Yeah. Or I mean, there's games that we didn't mention that are also amazing. Like, I know a lot of people haven't played Hades.
Hades is phenomenal.
Hades is an amazing game. The fact that it's not on my list is purely because I didn't play it as much. It is a really great game. I unfortunately am visually impaired, and being disabled is not a problem for some games, but it is a problem for Hades. Oh boy, you have a hard time playing that thing if you can't see everything on the screen. But yeah, I think at this point we're gonna close it out. Liz, do you want to do another Patreon thing, or do you want just Joe to take us out?
Well, just the standard Patreon thing, which is someone else has the regular
Yeah, I got
text
it.
for that one.
Joe's got it, so go ahead, Joe.
This is a part of our standard outro, folks. You guys have heard it, several hundred times now, if my count of podcasts is correct. Blizzard Watch is made possible due to the generous contributions at patreon.com/BlizzardWatch. Your continued support means this podcast sighting community is able to thrive and grow. Blizzard Watch supporters enjoy exclusive benefits like early access to our podcast, a better chance at having your question answered on our podcasts or the queue, and an ads-free site experience.
Thank you very much, Joe. I want to take this quick moment to say thank you to everybody who listens and participates both in the site and in this podcast and the other podcasts we're doing, because I've been doing podcasts for Blizzard Watch since Blizzard Watch started. I was on the first episode of the first Blizzard Watch podcast. I don't think I've missed more than one episode. And I'm terrible at doing podcasts. I am the worst podcaster you're ever going to meet. And these people managed to make me look like I know what I'm doing for 6 years. So I think we should all celebrate the accomplishments of the staff at Blizzard Watch for making that possible and for making me getting to talk about stuff like this possible. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, everybody who listens. This has been the Blizzard Watch podcast, and we'll talk to you next week.